Welcome to this episode of Preaching the Word, a video series on preaching sponsored by the Dunk Tank and the Berman Ministry Center. My name is Dr. Stephen Reasor, and I'm a preacher and author, and I teach preaching at Berman University in Lacombe, Alberta. In this episode on the different forms or shapes that sermons can take, we are spending some time talking about how to tell stories well. Everyone loves a great story. It is basic to human nature. We love stories because we live storied lives. The key to good storytelling is to create a tale that's fresh, original, and appealing with memorable characters, dialogue that propels the plot, and vivid images that let the story come to life in the imagination. There are some basic elements of storytelling that always work. We combine these with specific details and personal taste to create a story that stays with the audience. Now, every story must begin with conflict. If there's no conflict, danger, disagreement, or other ambiguity, it's not a story. Good stories add mounting tension to the conflict. They make you question the outcome and worry about the protagonist, the main character. This leads to a climactic moment, a moment of great tension, the greatest tension, where the story turns for good or for bad. And this leads to a resolution, where the conflict is resolved and the things that result from that resolution. In his TED Talk on the Storytelling Commandments, Andrew Stanton discusses some rules for telling good stories. I've borrowed some of his points and added some of my own to create a list of 12 suggestions for good storytelling. Number 1, make me care. The focus of the story must be someone or something I can relate to, can care about. People and animals are easy to care about. I might not care what happens to a business, but I will care about what happens to the woman who is working 16 hours a day to keep her business open. Give me someone to care about. Number 2, begin the story with the action. Don't spend a lot of time setting the scene. Get right to the action. Instead of starting with the gray clouds hung low in the sky and a little bit of rain spattered the sidewalk all across town. Cars rushed down avenues and people hurried from shop to shop. If these details are important, add them in later after the action begins. Start with, I was on my way to work this morning when the accident happened. The action begins right away. Commandment number 3, introduce conflict early on. The action needs to quickly grab your audience's attention. Conflict is how we do that. It can be situational conflict, like the accident I just mentioned. It can be interpersonal conflict, but Jane hated Bill with all her heart. Or it can be an obstacle in the way of the protagonist's goal. Jim knew he couldn't marry Ella unless he proved he could be successful. So get that conflict in very early. Commandment number 4, tell each part in anticipation of the next part. So arrange the events of the story to move quickly and to lead somewhere. At every pause, your audience should feel the question, what happened then? So make sure that the events of the story move quickly. Commandment number 5, make things worse before they get better. If the conflict is a car accident, the more trouble the protagonists face dealing with the accident, the greater the interest in the story will grow. If you present an obstacle, then make sure that other obstacles keep getting in the way before the conflict is resolved. Commandment number 6, include only those parts that are crucial to the story. This will help your story to move quickly. Do not include details that do not further the plot in some way. This is especially true in a sermon when time is precious. So let the story move quickly. Commandment number 7, give your audience clues instead of answers. Provide the elements of the story and let them draw the right conclusions. Instead of saying the teacher wanted the students to fail, say, every morning the teacher would sit in his classroom and think of the most difficult questions he could ask, the kind of questions that few students could answer. This lets the hearer realize the teacher wants his students to fail, and it helps the hearer to invest in the story and its outcome. Commandment number 8, provide foreshadowing of coming events. Drama is anticipation mingled with uncertainty. Change is fundamental in stories. Stories are never static, or else they die. So foreshadowing helps your audience know that change is coming. It adds anticipation to their uncertainty of exactly where the story is going. Commandment number 9, include specific details. Be as precise with your words as possible while still keeping your language simple and understandable. Say a geranium instead of a flower, and sneaker instead of shoe. Vivid details paint lasting pictures in the minds of your listeners. So use simple language, but make it specific and precise. Commandment number 10, create interesting characters. Characters drive interest. Give the audience a sense of their physical appearance, their occupation, and their manner of speaking. Paint believable pictures to create unforgettable characters, and let their words tell the audience what they think. Good characters have a spine, an inner motor, they have a purpose, they have faults, and they have virtues. So make your characters rich and bold, make them stand out. Commandment number 11, use silence to add emphasis. You must develop a sense of the rhythm of storytelling, of when to pause, let a word hang in the air, and when to rush quickly through a series of events so that the listeners are caught up in the urgency of the action. You do this by varying your sentence length and the rate and pitch at which you speak. And finally, our last commandment, commandment number 12, open a new window into the world. The purpose of stories in a sermon are to illustrate, to shed light on something. Good stories provide a new experience or a perspective, or even a transformation for the character in the story and for us. Your assignment for this episode is to write a story as an illustration for a sermon. In the last episode, we talked about where you can go to find illustrations. So find one and then rewrite it as a story, following the 12 guidelines that I've just shared. When you've finished your assignment, join me for the final episode of this series on sermon forms, where we will talk about the importance of dynamic in our preaching. See you soon.